There was a weight to the stillness, the tangerine band streaking across the inky horizon holding something contrary to the promise of a new day. Liv's nostrils stuck together as she drew in a breath. So cold. Maybe not as cold as the winters she remembered as a child at Montreal, but the record-breaking polar vortex sweeping southern Ontario made her forget some of her hardy Quebecois pride. She tugged her hood down and pushed gloved hands deeper into the pockets of her down-filled jacket, the squeak of her boots on the laneway's hard-packed snow like styrofoam to her ears. She'd take those frigid mornings over what was to come, inventing creative ways to keep her fingers from freezing as she legged up feisty 2-year-olds in the indoor arena was still preferable to hours spent imprisoned in the University of Guelph's stuffy lecture halls and labs. Just 3 more days of winter break, and that's what she'd be back to, pursuing a degree she wasn't convinced she wanted. Back to reality. Back to expectations. Light spilled from the barn's overhead apartment, and she almost expected to feel warmth as she sliced through the bright pool of light in her path. She slid through the side door, frost condensing on her eyelashes, her face starting to thaw, and a chorus of whinnies greeting her even before she switched on the lights. "Morning, girls," she called, inspiring another sing-song as she ducked into the feed room and scooped the breakfast ration of grain into a pail. When she turned the corner to the well-lit aisle, the faces of 2 mares jutted out of boxes on either side. The third, though... "Hey, Tiss, what's up?" So Tiss stood in the corner of the deeply bedded straw, oblivious. The mare took a deliberate turn, huge belly swollen with the life she carried, her tail slightly raised, patches of sweat on her flank and neck darkening her bright chestnut coat to liver. Liv's heart rate took off, and she scrambled to feed the other 2 horses. Nerves and muscles were at odds with her brain, but she summoned enough self-control to keep from racing back to the feed room, the grain bucket clattering to the ground. Vapor from the hot water flushed her face as she filled a stainless steel pail. In her other hand, she scooped up the foaling kit she'd prepared, just in case, and power-walked back to the stall. "Hold it together, Liv." Her hands were trembling so badly she fumbled with the elastic bandage as she wrapped Sotis's long golden tail, something she should be able to do in her sleep. 3 weeks. Sotis was 3 weeks early. Not technically premature, but still. She glanced at the time on her phone, then up at the ceiling. Both she and the exercise rider who lived upstairs were due at the training barn for 7, but she definitely wasn't going to make it now. Calling on an extra set of hands was the sensible thing to do, even though complications were rare. This was Sotis, Papa's favorite race mare, having her first foal by none other than Just Lucky. And she could be as practical as she wanted about the breeding business, but there was no denying she'd been waiting for this foal. This foal was special. Foaling was messy and fast, but there was something intimate about it, too, ushering a newborn into this world, and part of her didn't want to share it with a stranger. Because, even though Nate Miller had been working on the farm since September, he was really still a stranger to her. She'd just get him to hold Sotis while she checked the foal's position and washed under her tail and udder. Once she knew all was well, he could go. Taking 2 steps at a time, she flew up the stairwell. Meaning to knock softly, she rapped a staccato beat on the apartment door. There was no hiding the welling combination of panic and excitement in her eyes. The whole being professional and under control thing was definitely not coming off at the moment. She was ready to knock again when the door swung open. "Everything okay?" Nate stepped back to let her inside, eyebrow tweaked, but she stayed where she was and dodged his eyes when they landed on hers. Damn the way her stomach tumbled. Normal, physiological response, right? Sure, he was good-looking, but she had enough trouble being taken seriously because she looked 14 without acting it. She'd leave the gushing to her younger sister, Emily, and the girls who worked on the farm, all of whom had applauded her for hiring him to break yearlings last summer. She'd given him the job because of his experience and references, not because a hot guy would be a welcome addition to the female-dominated staff. "Sotis is in labor. I need someone to hold her while I check the foal's position. I won't keep you long." Words ran together, the heat wafting from the apartment threatening to turn her into a puddle of sweat. Winter? What winter? "She's pretty early, isn't she?" Liv nodded, already dashing back down the stairs. Sotis was sinking to her knees in the straw,